Wherever you live next to and interact with wildlife. These are conversations with people about their interactions with the natural history of Rangihaeata in Golden Bay. I'm talking with local resident Cynthia McConville about variable oyster-catchers. They live on our coastline between the Onahau, Takaka and Motupipi estuaries. So Cynthia, describe what you can see from where we're sitting.
I overlook Forest and Birds Three Rivers project. It's just an amazing environment that we share here at Rangihaeata with, the different birds that we have. Pat and I have just been looking at the spoonbills down there, the South Island pied oyster-catchers.
I called them sippos, but actually it's not sippos, is it? It's sipos.
Sipos, yes. And Pat spotted a couple of variable oyster-catchers, VOX.
Yes, VOX, with all these acronyms, haven't we?
Well, it's far easier, especially when you're talking to other birders.
And there was a lot of mallards down there as well.
A huge number, more than I've seen all of this duck shooting season. So I don't know whether they're finding a retreat in the Waitapu estuary at the moment.
So we're looking down from your property in Rangihaeata. We can see the Takaka River in the estuary. And just beyond that, there's our Bird Island Reserve, and beyond that, Motupipi estuary. And behind us, I guess, is the other river, which is the Onahau wetland and the little river that comes in there. And that's what we call our Three Rivers project.
Yes, yeah.
And today you're going to talk about one of your favourite birds from down there, one of the VOX.
Yes.
The variable oyster-catchers, because when we've been walking on the beach, you've often mentioned the importance of these birds and this site for those.
They are very important to Golden Bay, simply because they make up 1/3 of the global population of these particular birds.
In Golden Bay?
In Tasman District, yes. Yeah, but the majority of them are here. There are not that many over in Nelson. Probably a few more on the Motueka Sandspit in Motueka, but the majority of the variable oyster-catchers are here.
And you tend to take them for granted because you always see a couple, and they're usually a couple, aren't they?
They are. They do hang out on our beaches in pairs. Yeah. The only time you'll see them in any group is when they're roosting on the high tide, and by roosting I mean sleeping. It's when they actually rest and preen and wait for the high tide to unroll their food, unravel so that their food appears and then follow it out. Yeah,
if you're down there on a retreating tide, you can see them, can't you, following the tide out? Yeah.
I think they're a bird that most people know, and they're what we call a black morph. So the oyster-catchers in the South Island are completely black, lovely red eyes and sort of pinky coral coloured legs. If you see grey legs on an oyster-catcher, then it's a juvenile.
Right.
But up in the North Island, variable oyster-catchers are black with white patches on different parts of their body.
So that's where the variable comes in.
Yes, because a lot of people say to me, why are they called variable oyster-catchers when they're all black? Yeah. I've only ever seen one oyster-catcher in Golden Bay, and that was at Port Taukoho, that had the white on it, and, possibly come over in a storm or something like that.
I suppose they could have got blown over from the North Island.
Yes.
They've got amazing beaks too, haven't they? You have to mention their beaks.
They're wonderful, and their ability to, pick up a cockle and prise it open. And I've watched, oyster-catchers, adults, flying with the cockle in their beak, back to their chicks, and then opening it for them and standing back and letting the wee ones eat.
They're a bit vulnerable when they're nesting, because they nest really in the open.
They're extremely vulnerable. And not just to human activities, but to tidal surge as well. And sometimes they'll choose the worst place to nest, but there's nothing you can do about it.
I remember a few years ago when one of them nested on top of that rock just down from here. That must have been one of the worst places, right where people walk, on top of a rock, in full view. And I don't think it was successful, was it, in terms of raising any chicks?
I've seen one chick raised there, and one of the things that amazed me in that was that they were out on one of the large flat rocks beyond there.
Yeah.
And the high tide came in, and I was thinking, how is that chick going to survive this? And I've been told that variable oyster-catcher chicks can swim, but I would never have believed it. And so one adult bird went in, swimming to the shore, and then the second one left, and there was this little chick, on the rock. And I thought, even if it got in, I'm sure it'll go straight down to the bottom because its coat will just be, absorb all the water. And it just amazed me to watch this chick swim in probably 20 or 30 metres, I would say, into the shore and onto the beach.
Typically, though, they nest in the sand just above the high tide mark.
Yes.
And, of course, that's where a lot of people walk. Either walk themselves or walk with their dogs.
Yes.
So again, that's another reason why they're vulnerable.
The safest place for them in Rangihaeata is the Oyster sandspit. I don't think many people really understand, what a sandspit is. They just think of it as part of the beach. And it's an area that's been formed over many years, through driftwood washing up and then wind blowing sand over the top of it. So it's kind of self-constructed and really important sites in the Three Rivers project. And we've got one down here at the bottom of Charlotte Point that a lot of people go down there to swim. And I often think, gosh, wouldn't it be nice, if we got people to go down there and remove all the weeds, the invasive weeds and trees off it. I mean, it would make a beautiful area to sit and picnic. And
it is a lovely spot. And it'd be a lovely spot to share it with the variable oyster-catchers, the box.
Yes. Yeah, so the Oyster sandspit is very important, to Rangihaeata and to variable oyster-catchers.
And if people aren't familiar with Oyster sandspit, it's at the bottom of Fraser Road, and turn left until you can't go any further.
That's right, and just beyond that is the Oyster River. So that's one of the three rivers in the Three Rivers project. And the estuary itself has amazing bird life, particularly when the nesting season is over for a lot of birds. I've counted 25 pied storks in there. Not unusual to see royal spoonbills, black shags, little pied shags, all sorts, and godwits.
And paradise shellducks.
Yes.
Down there today, there was heaps of paradise shellducks down there.
Well, I'm just wondering when the molting time is. I just can't remember offhand, but it is an area where they go to molt, and during that time they can't fly, so they need to be in a really safe place. And so Oyster Estuaries being the molting site for paradise ducks.
That's a good place to stop and say we'll talk about the paradise shell ducks next time. Thanks very much, Cynthia.
Thank you, Pat.
That was Cynthia McConville talking about the variable oyster-catchers of the Rangihaeata coastline, part of a series of talks on the natural history of Rangihaeata. The variable oyster-catchers are such a familiar part of any walk along our beaches. It would be such a shame if we no longer saw the couples on the tide line or heard their piping call. And to end, here is that piping call.